So it's the day before Ireland is due to take to the polls once again to elect or select or implant their latest president off the back of Michael D. Higgins, who's been entrenched in his abode for the last 14 odd years. And it looks like, if the bookies are anything to go by, we're going to be getting more of the same in the shape and form of Catherine Comrade Red Connelly, if anything is to go by. So we've been talking about this for the last month or so with Dr. Vincent Carroll here. He has been extremely vocal in pushing the concept of spoiling the vote. This is taking legs. It seems to be more and more people are disenfranchised, but there's now immediate kickback against this to say that this behavior is somehow infantile and juvenile, and our forefathers would be rolling in their graves if they could see us running around like spoiled children, spoiling that vote. What do you make of that, Dr. Vincent Carroll?
Well, people are getting worried. I mean, mainstream are getting worried about the idea of spoiling the vote. First of all, for any of us campaigning to spoil the vote, we're actually voting and we're having a vote recorded, and that vote is recorded as a spoiled vote. And that's an important concept to get across. And as that concept is being got across, people are seeing the logic of it. And as a result of that, the mainstream are kicking back against it. They're doing so in two ways. They're trying to trivialize it, and secondly, they're totally ignoring it. For example, the Business Post Red Sea poll, it gave a poll, I think yesterday or the day before, in which it obviously gave Catherine Connolly a great lead and Heather Humphreys somewhere down at the bottom, and even Jim Gavin on 10%. Can you believe that? But it failed to mention any concept of spoiled to vote. It lumped spoiled to vote in with those who were not going to turn up or those who were undecided, and then it distributed those votes, which is a statistical nonsense, into proportionately for Catherine Connolly or Heather Humphreys, failing to take into account that a certain percentage have decided to spoil their vote. So the whole spoil the vote thing has been hidden away, and that's a deliberate ploy. And when it cannot be hidden away, it is trivialized. And I mean, I can understand that, because we don't have it as a culture within this country to spoil our vote, unlike most of continental Europe, where that is an option on many ballot papers: vote A, vote B, or vote none of the above. But we don't have that option here. So spoiling the vote, for us to try to encourage people to spoil the vote, it is an uphill battle, and we are on the back foot making that happen. And time is not on our side making that happen. But having said all that, my impression is there'll be a large number of spoiled votes. And that's very, very important, because that sends a powerful message to government that people feel disenfranchised. And if you're disenfranchised, if enough people are disenfranchised, when does democracy end and pseudo-democracy kick in? And we'll see when the results come in tomorrow. We'll make that judgment call.
Yeah, I think that's important what you've just referenced in terms of the number of spoiled votes. I think, if nothing else, it'll be a record number of spoiled votes in any electoral campaign or any electoral count ever in the history of the state. I want to show you a brief clip now. This is only a minute long. This was taken from a broadcast that went out last night. So this, as you say, the concept of spoiling your vote is a new concept to many people. It's not something that was really considered before in any great with any great force. But I think also the fact that this has really kicked in after Maria Steen was stitched up in her exclusion from this campaign. At that point, I think really that was the tipping point for people to really look at this option of the vote spoiling and really get behind it, which hasn't been a great window either, has it? We've really only had a month, maybe 5 weeks, to really seed this into more people's heads and to get a bit of a wind behind it. So that's working against it also. Would you agree?
Well, the clock's ticking down. I mean, that's very true. And for any campaign, you have to get organized, and that takes time. And you
Yeah.
have to, get yourself organized, get the boots on the ground, and whatever else. And that does take time. It takes money, it takes finance, it takes effort, it takes all sorts of things. And it wasn't something that we were geared up to doing because, like a lot of people, perhaps we presumed that the democratic process, in the end, in some shape or form, would win out. But this time round, it hasn't. Two identical establishment candidates uh, are now running for election. Neither of them are a protest candidate. Let's be clear about that. Each of them have a murky, dark history, especially Catherine Connolly, who's out in the lead. And maybe we go into that later on
Mhm.
as this sort of thing progresses. But yes, we have an uphill battle, but the people have started to come behind us. And we've one more day, and an awful lot can happen in one more day.
It could, and I believe that also to the extent that last night there was a big push against this concept of spoiling your vote that went out, with the usual mainstream mainstays like Cudahy was on there with his selected panel to try and seed this idea that to spoil your vote was somehow an act of insanity. I'll show you this clip and then you can give me your thoughts on it here.
Mhm.
So this was recorded, I believe, last night.
Idea of spoiling the vote, like people fought and died for us to have this vote, and to treat it in such a, I always call, juvenile way that you can spoil your vote. Declan, by spoiling their vote, they're essentially voting for the government. That's what a spoiled vote is going to do. It doesn't, and I think
How's that
to turn out.
Sorry,
No, hang on a minute. Hang on.
ahead
Hang
in the
on.
polls,
You
so I
can-
don't understand what I don't understand.
Because
that
a spoiled vote is essentially a vote for Heather Humphreys. That's what it will result in
How is
if
a
people
spoiled
do
vote
that.
a vote for Heather Humphreys?
Because clearly it's not a vote for someone who is an independent voice. And what is going to happen?
For Heather Humphreys.
Well, I believe it. I believe spoiling the vote is effectively going to be that. But look, hang on. I think
is a vote against the system as it stands.
No, it's not. If you're
is.
against the system, if you want to see a president who will actually challenge this government, you want to see a president who is independent, who has their whole life been independent.
independent
It is
candidate
Catherine
backed by
Connolly.
So that was a little bit, a little bit fiery there at one stage. So effectively, this guy saying, if you spoil the vote, it's a juvenile thing to do. What would our forefathers have thought? They fought and died that we could have the vote. And I'll use you as an example, right? You do not strike me as a juvenile person. You do not strike me as someone who takes lightly what our forefathers have sacrificed that we should have, or at least should be able to exercise proper, real democracy, not this faux pseudo democracy that's being put before us here today. You're adamantly behind this. You're completely convinced that this is the right thing to do to spoil the vote. And, you're not, I believe, unless you're disguising it really well, you're not a stark raving lunatic. You're a learned man, a professional man, have been all your life. So I would say you would be the antithesis to that statement that was just made there, which is probably one of the reasons why you're not on that program and that guy is.
Oh, I'd love to have been on that program, but have no way I'd get on it. But having said that, it was mentioned, the first chap up mentioned about fighting our forefathers, fighting for democracy, and that's absolutely true. But what has happened now is we've been deprived of that democracy, and that's the point that was not made out. People fought for democracy, and now we have been deprived of democracy, and some sort of a pseudo fake democracy has been put in place. It also mentioned the absolute untruth about Catherine Connolly being a non-establishment candidate, being an independent candidate. Let's be clear about this. And this point has not been purveyed out in the detail that it should have been. If you're running for president, the nation's meant to unite behind you as a president, whoever the president is, because that president is the first citizen of the country. But in fact, therefore, we need to know about the background of both candidates. And Catherine Connolly has been completely opaque about her background. I mean, I've asked, and indeed, Rick, you've asked repeatedly, how many Irish families have lost their homes because of the activity, the legal work of Catherine Connolly? How many Irish people, through no fault of their own, have fallen foul of the banking system and are now out in some bedsit somewhere simply because of the actions of Catherine Connolly representing banks? And the very same Catherine Connolly then goes into the Dáil and gives out about those banks.
Yeah.
Well, I want to know exactly how many Irish families have lost their homes because of the work of Catherine Connolly. I want to know how much Catherine Connolly got paid for that work in having people homes repossessed and people put out of their homes. And I want to know those two facts, and I'm not getting them, and I won't get them. And Catherine Connolly knows the clock is ticking down to 5 p.m. or 10 p.m. or whatever it is tomorrow when the polls close. She knows that. She knows she's ahead in the polls. All she has to do is be invisible, say nothing, smile and move on, and lull people into this false sense that all is okay. But all is not okay. Not okay if you've lost your home. Not okay if you're out in some crummy bedsit somewhere, having made honest effort to put a mortgage down and purchase your house, and then you and your family are out as a result of the legal work of Catherine Connolly. I mean, that goes back to the rack rent landlords of the last century when people got evicted. Nowadays, we don't use the word evicted, we use the word repossessed, but they mean the very same thing. The actions are the very same thing. And above all, the profit that derives from it, the finance paid to barristers, just in the same way the finance paid to them, to the eviction squads of the 19th century. It's the very same thing. There is no difference. Catherine Connolly is a person, because she's been asked and asked and asked and has refused to deny that she has put people out of their homes because of her legal work. She's an establishment figure. She's somebody misrepresenting herself as a socialist. She's somebody that obviously Sinn Féin and others have rode in behind her. They know about this. People against or before profit or whatever they call themselves know about this, but are happy to abandon those who are her victims to get her over the line. And that is completely unsatisfactory. And it's a hypocrite thing to do when you go into the Parliament, into Dáil Éireann, and then you bemoan about the banks and give out about them when you are in their payroll. That's bad, that's wrong, and that's been a hypocrite. So I'm going to spoil my vote. There's absolutely no way I can vote for somebody like that.
Yeah, the hypocrisy of that particular thing that you've just highlighted there, the working for banks, repossessing houses, getting Irish people out of their houses and into squalor and into poverty and into hardship and into unfavorable living conditions to bring a family up in. The amount of the record homelessness at the minute in Ireland, there's 6,000 children that are technically homeless or in emergency accommodation, which is a horrendous position to be in. The number's growing. And that one issue, set aside anything else that she may be about, that one issue blows a complete hole in her whole socialist facade. The fact that, shock horror, Catherine, the socialist, would have been a barrister working for banks to evict Irish families. Now she claims, like, I refuse to answer that. I don't have to answer that. That's personal, that's legal, etc., etc. And then she talks about taxi cab system. You have to take whatever case is set before you. No, you don't. You can conscientiously object if you patently disagree with an issue or a client. For example, say there's a conflict of interest there. I can't represent with any due conscience that client, or that client, because they're completely the polar opposite to what I'm all about at my core. You don't have to. It's not a taxi rank system.
Of course, it's not at all. Conscience enters into it. But the point is, the banks in that era were seeking strong legal opinion. They wanted barristers because there was an absolute tsunami of home repossessions. So because of that, they wanted a number of barristers prepared to do, I mean, let's call it what it is, their dirty work. And a relatively small number of barristers organizers, believe it or not, got on board. And certainly Catherine Connolly has not denied that she was one of them. And she was confronted about this by one of her victims, as far as I can recollect, a couple of weeks ago in an interview or a video that was released about it. And that's how the whole thing started off. And without that, we would have had no idea that she was so involved in that world. So legitimate questions were put to her. And I suspect by some people with a sense of disbelief. I mean, you generally believe what people tell you up to a point, and suddenly it started to unravel. But what is most disappointing is there's a conspiracy of silence with mainstream media and fake opposition parties. Nobody's rattling that cage. Nobody. They may do so after Friday, but then of course it's too late.
Yeah.
We have a president that we can be truly ashamed of, but still she's a president. But that's the problem here. It's a matter of getting her over the line, and all her supporters, the Sinn Féin and everybody else, are quite happy to abandon those people who are her victims for the sake of getting their person as president.
Well said. I'm going to show you a picture now, okay? And I think it's a sinister picture, but I think they say a picture speaks 1,000 words. So I'm gonna show this picture right now. So let me remove that. Put this one in. Okay. So this was taken on, I think, at the start of this week, and maybe purposely, or I think maybe appropriately, there's a very red theme going on in this picture, and we have the aforenamed Catherine Connolly sitting second from the right on this picture, surrounded by her grinning supporters. We have that lady from Labour, we have Coppinger and Paul Murphy from People Before Profit, we have Mary Lou McDonald from Sinn Féin, we have another one of these poster girls from the Social Democrats. They say, Vincent, you may have heard of this expression before, but if you show me a man or a woman's company, I'll show you their conduct. Could there ever be a more damning picture taken with them all sitting grinning like Cheshire cats? And that one, what an unholy alliance has formed behind this woman.
Well, it is a very unholy alliance, absolutely. And I'm just looking at it, and curiously, Ivana Bacek is first up, smiling. And away in the background, you see the Sinn Féin leader, Mrs. MacDonald, Mary Lou MacDonald. I mean, again, she's rather down the list. I would have expected her to be up at the top. But it just goes to show how this election also is something that Sinn Féin is very junior in. And there must be a lot of discontent within their own party. I mean, I've no idea with the thinkings within Sinn Féin, but if I were within there, and if I realised that the so-called official opposition has failed to field a candidate of their own and now is down at the bottom of the tables trying to smile and say, hey, we're in it as well, I'd be ashamed as a member of Sinn Féin, and I'd be calling for a replacement leadership in a case like that. But that's a separate issue. Clearly, I'm not a member and never will be. But having said that, yes, it's a very unholy alliance, but the plan is the same. Get Catherine Connolly over the line at all cost. Her murky, dark past will be washed clean for the sake of getting her over the line. And that's what it's all about. And then you're stuck with her for 7 years, of course.
At least 7. God forbid there could be 14 years of her like there was with
Well, the
Michael
problem
D.
is now her talk is quite soft. She smiles, she moves on, she talks about inclusiveness, she moves on again. But just wait until she gets in. There'll be a 2-speed system to the two Áras Nuach drawn. Speed 1 are the Sinn Féin, the LGB people, the climate people, all of those will have, all NGOs will have a direct access because they're entitled to do so. They'll say, we put you in, we demand open access, whereas the rest of us, the ordinary, decent 80% of the nation, will be locked outside.
It's a sobering thought. And, going back to just pick up on one other comment that was made concerning her on that show that went out last night that we saw the clip of, the guy at the end said, look, if you want an independent candidate, one that will challenge the government, then Catherine Connolly is the woman for you, because there are just two women left in the race now. You know, it's a two horse race, and Humphreys is pretty much a non-starter now. You know, this concept of Connelly being a government challenger, that she'll stand up somehow, be some kind of bulwark between, you know, the common man or woman and the Fine Gael Fianna Fáil coalition. Is that another fallacy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just think what's going to happen over the next year or two, the type of legislation that will probably be passed by Dáil Éireann and will go up to the president for signing or for scrutiny. I mean, take, for example, new hate speech legislation, where you may be told not only what to say, but also almost what to think, where you may stand, what your thoughts may be on things. This hate speech legislation, for example, silent prayer within exclusion zones tends to be out of bounds, certainly in the UK. And therefore, in Ireland, we are going to probably have new legislation in the whole area of hate speech. What about assisted dying, otherwise known as euthanasia? Bills that really sort of are they're described as socially progressive. I see them as socially regressive and full of unintended consequences. But having said that, they'll go up to Áras Nuacht Drom. But because you have a president that aligns philosophically with those bills, they will be whooshed through without due scrutiny, and certainly without referral to the Supreme Court, and possibly many other climate-related things, or that perhaps are detrimental to Irish farmers. All of that, and maybe that's why 9 ex-members of the IFA, who were presidents of the IFA, have come together and asked people to vote for Heather Humphreys. Not that that's going to make much difference either, but there is worry and there is concern within the Irish farming community about Catherine Connolly, and within many, many communities about Catherine Connolly, simply because she will have her people, her ideology, and that will pull rank. And the president's ideology is not meant to pull rank, but her ideology will pull rank. The gloves are on now. After Friday, her gloves will be off. Wait and see.
Yeah, it's a sobering thought. I find the woman, I wasn't really particularly aware of her before this whole campaign started. Many people weren't, you know, she just was that person that was floating around in the background. But obviously she's taking center stage at the minute, especially this week with the election being tomorrow, with people going to the polls tomorrow. And of course, the huge push behind her from all those parties that we have just shown the picture of, the People Before Profits, the Sinn Féins, the Labour Party, and the Irish Communist Party. They're getting behind her. Apparently she has a legion of volunteers that have been knocking doors and leafleting, and you know, tens of thousands, if we're to be if we believe the propaganda that's being put out there, are getting in behind Connelly. The Vulture Fund bank repossession issue is a big blot on her copybook, which she's desperately trying to cover up at the moment. Another thing this week in particular that she's very much for, that's almost overshadowed everything else, has been the violence and the protesting and the heinous activities that have been going on in the grounds of the City West Asylum Hub in Saggart in Dublin. Now that picture, I'll show you it again. Actually, when that picture was taken earlier this week, that was, I believe, on Monday. I might be wrong about the day, but it was the day off or the day after that little girl was attacked in City West. The man was arrested. He was shown to be a migrant who shouldn't have been here for 6 years, should have been deported, wasn't deported. Then the protests started, and then this whole madness has unfolded ever since then. They were very tight-lipped about that issue on the day that it happened. They were going away and they were thinking about it. Obviously, Micheál Martin has even came out, I think this morning, and made a statement saying maybe it's time for a civilized debate on the whole issue of migration into Ireland. There's obviously, could cause massive ramifications right across the island if this takes legs, this resistance to the IPAS. Connelly has made it clear also this week that in her opinion, this business, this concept that Ireland is full, that we should be tighter on immigration, we should be, you know, more careful. She believes that's a dangerous concept. The fact that Ireland is full, this whole mantra of Ireland, it's dangerous. She wants more people in.
That's ideology. I mean, look at the common sense. Try to rent an apartment, you try to buy an apartment, a house, anything like that, and compare and contrast. I mean, if you Google in what, I don't know, what 200,000 gets you in Ireland versus what 200,000 gets you in Italy or France or Germany or any place like that, there is absolutely no comparison. And people should do that just for the sake of discovering the vast discrepancy, because then you can ask why. And yes, there was lots of trouble out at City West. You know what? I'm not interested. I couldn't care less, because my focus and thoughts and prayers are on that unfortunate girl and her family that appeared to be somewhat dysfunctional. I mean, and it's Tusla's job to try to put them together as a family unit, and Tusla clearly, plainly failed. But regardless, yes, there was civil disturbance. Yes, according to the Irish legacy media, 2,000 people turned out. According to the British media, several thousand people turned out at City West. So I know which to believe. But regardless, you're talking about ordinary, decent people, for the most part, who never protested in their lives before. It's not in our nature to protest. Most people don't protest unless something grotesque happens in your neighborhood. And something grotesque did happen that should not have happened. That was completely predictable and completely avoidable, because the person responsible, who incidentally needed an Arab-speaking translator in court, and who's now getting his mental health assessed. We're going down the usual route you'd expect here. But regardless, he should have deported. There was a deportation order, as you correctly pointed out, signed against him. Yes, people are outraged. People went out. A small minority of people threw bricks and stones and fireworks and whatever else, and maybe they shouldn't have done that. But that's irrelevant. You know, a Garda van got burnt. I would say, so what compared to the mind of a child getting damaged? You can replace a Garda van. You certainly cannot replace the mind of a child. So let's get our priorities right. And on top of that, all this is supported by strong academic evidence in published peer-reviewed articles. In February 2021, Forensic Science, which is a peer-reviewed publication, published in Sweden that North African people are overrepresented in the rape statistics by a factor, I think, is 480%, a ratio of 4.8, and that men of Middle Eastern origin are overrepresented in the rape statistics by a factor of 3.3. That's by 330%. That's fact. That's published peer-reviewed fact in a forensic journal, there for everybody to see in any academic library. But yet government will ignore that. NGOs will ignore that. Fake opposition will ignore that. And ideology will drive the concept of taking a chance. Pack 2,300 people into City West. Hopefully they'll behave. Hopefully nothing will go wrong. Well, you know what? Something did go wrong. That was waiting to go wrong. And that is utterly unacceptable.
Of all that you've just said, the one thing that's still in my head is, you know, you can replace a vehicle, but you can't replace the mind of a child. And it's Sagart, the area that place is in, has been ruined. You know, it was a small, you know, tight-knit village to begin with. The grounds also, it's not just the hotel that has an occupancy of about 2,400 people. The conference facilities have been bought. 50 acres of ground have been bought. It's a 25-year plan, according to Jim O'Callaghan, who's also from that area. It's a long-term, you know, it's being made into a permanent International Protection Accommodation Services IPAS hub. That's their vision. That's the government's vision for that place. The vision is not, okay, let's close the place down. Maybe we made a mistake. Let's get it back there, out there to tourists again. That's not even in their thinking at this point in time. But yet, Catherine Connolly, again, she would be the first person to say, no, Ireland is not full, but that's another thing to be aware of. I just wanted to bring that in to let people know.
She's pro-migrancy. She's pro-migrancy, absolutely. And again, that's from ideological reasons. And she hasn't been challenged on that. I mean, the number of mistakes, well, let's call it that, I suppose, that she's made and she's got away with, quite apart from getting away with the banking, getting away with the IPAS centres. She got away when she was asked, would you employ a rapist? And she had to think about it. You know, if you go to a sweet shop and ask the sweet shop proprietor, would you employ a rapist? He'd throw you out. I mean, it is outrageous sort of what she's getting away with. And she's getting away with it because she's not been highlighted. Instead, she's been promoted as the protest candidate. If you want to protest, vote by spoiling your vote. And that's the single most important thing you can do to give a message to both these fake people who are in effect opportunists because they're misrepresenting themselves. Catherine Connolly is misrepresenting herself as a socialist, and Heather Humphreys is misrepresenting herself as somebody who'll represent the people. She'll represent political parties, she'll represent the Dáil, and Ars Nuc will become an extension of the Dáil in many ways with Heather Humphreys, because it's the only life she knows. But Catherine Connolly is the more dangerous of the two. She has more vision and she's more dangerous people backing her. And worse than that, she is now beholding to those dangerous people who are backing her. They will try to make her she will become their puppet, and because they will demand their pound of flesh for getting her over the line.
So in summary, the whole focus of what we were talking about from the first time I heard you speaking outside the GPO, and you mentioned the vast majority of the people at City West, for example, are there peacefully. They've never protested in their life before. Maybe it's not something that they particularly want to do, but they feel compelled to do. The same could be said for you. I think the first time I spoke with you, I mean, you didn't envision yourself at this point in your life becoming, a town crier against the government and to tell people to go against what they would normally do, which is to vote for a candidate, but instead to put an X through all of them and spoil the vote. I mean, you didn't foresee yourself doing that either.
Not at all.
I didn't foresee myself talking about this stuff either. I mean, none of this was foreseen, but that's the crazy times in which we live. I think a lot of people are being moved in directions they would never have moved in. They're being united with people that they would never otherwise have met against a common enemy, which is this treacherous government. So I'll throw it over to you to finish this. You talk about, for people that haven't heard you, that are maybe coming across this video for the first time, you're talking about spoiling your vote. You know it's a simple thing to do. I know it's a simple thing to do, but for somebody that maybe just is humming and hawing about it, they're thinking about going out tomorrow, they don't know what to do. Tell them how to spoil the vote and why they should spoil the vote.
Oh, it's very, very straightforward. First of all, by spoiling your vote, you are voting. You are making a statement. You're having your vote recorded. You're not sitting at home. Sitting at home achieves nothing because it will be attributed to other factors like laziness or bad weather or whatever. But when you turn out and spoil your vote, it will be recorded as a spoiled vote. So you have voted, and that's the most important thing. You have exercised your democratic franchise. But you must ask yourself two questions. Firstly, can I honestly support wholeheartedly any candidate there of the two candidates going up, and what they represent and what they have represented and what they voted upon and voted for in the past? Can I truly, do they align with my values? And if one or other aligns with your values, then vote for them. That's called democracy. I have no difficulty with that. But if you have a hesitancy there and say, no, Heather Humphreys voted for the repeal of the Eighth Amendment, she voted for hate speech. No, I don't agree with that. Or at least I'm uncomfortable about that. So I'm not going to vote for her. Catherine Connolly, with her murky past, repossessing Irish homes during the banking crisis and misrepresenting herself as some sort of a socialist. No, I'm very unhappy about that. If that is your point of view, turn up and vote, but vote by spoiling your vote. And what you are saying is, I'm not in agreement with either candidate, but I am in agreement with democracy. Now, ask yourself again, has your democratic right been removed from you? Have you been disenfranchised by having other worthy candidates' names removed off the ballot paper? They never got on the ballot paper. I'm not just referring to Maria Steen, I'm referring to many other people as well, worthy people who didn't stand a chance of getting their name onto the ballot paper. If you feel you've been disenfranchised, that, if you like to use an expression, a fast one has been pulled on you by government and fake opposition, then fight back. Do the only thing you can do. Turn up and vote no. Sorry, vote, spoil your vote. Say no, no, no on the 3 names on the ballot paper, or draw a line through it, or write a name on it. But it could be Maria Steen or whoever's name you want to write on it. But you're spoiling your vote. And by spoiling your vote, you're making your statement, you're preserving democracy, you're having your democratic say. Your vote will be recorded, and it will undermine the authority of anybody else getting into the presidency, and hopefully will cause government to invoke Article 14 of the Constitution, which would declare the result to be invalid. I mean, if Catherine Connolly or whoever wins just gets 20% for the sake of the overall electorate, and probably less than that, that means only 1 person in 5 can say she is my president. That means 4 people in 5 can say you're not my president and you don't represent me. That's not democracy. That's every reason for having the results suspended and the election reran with a different selection process to let more worthy people onto the ballot paper. So therefore, turn up and vote by spoiling your vote. Have your vote recorded. Vote, but spoil your vote, and it will be recorded as your democratic disgust at the fake democracy that is being offered to you. That's what I would say.
Well, I'm glad you said it, because I'll be honest, if you're listening and if that speech hasn't convinced you to go out and spoil your vote, nothing will. Nothing will move them to do it. So Vincent, I want to thank you very much for your time this morning. And of course, the last few weeks we spoke about this several times, and tomorrow time has marched on, and tomorrow is D-Day, voting day for the Irish electorate. So they will be out. They will be going to the polls, and then I suppose the dust will settle. The counting will be done over the course of the weekend, and the new Uachtaráin Hearn will be announced next week. But it's a foregone conclusion in many people's eyes. So maybe what we'll do is over the next week or so, we'll get together for a post-mortem, and we'll see maybe how quickly the veil is removed and the gloves are removed when it comes to Comrade Connelly. So a big thanks again to you this morning. That's Dr. Vincent Carroll. There'll be a link in the description box underneath this video. He has a small but potent Telegram channel that's growing slowly. Get in there. If you use Telegram, just join his channel, and show him some support. He shows videos. He does these brilliant monologue videos on there. That's his main platform for them. So the link for that will be in the description box underneath this video. So Vincent, thanks again. I hope you have a great day. And for now, anyway, I'm Rick Munn. This is No Risk, No Reward Media, over and out.